My wife, who had been dead for 7 years, suddenly came back to life. Not only did she return with another man, she wanted me to willingly give up my position as her husband. Gavin nearly lost his sight saving me. I've already promised to marry him. If you sign the divorce papers without a fuss, I'll let you continue living here. I was silent for a moment, then spoke softly. Actually, I'm already married to someone else. Rosa rolled her eyes. Don't play tough, Sean. Everyone knows you're head over heels in love with me. But I was no longer the Sean from 7 years ago. I was no longer the doormat who followed her every command and worshipped her until I had no dignity left. I have no reason to lie to you. I am married to someone else. Rosa shot me a look of pure contempt and sneered. Stop the act, Sean. I'm not here to ask for your permission. I'm here to inform you that whether you like it or not, I'm marrying Gavin. Gavin stepped forward, his fingers intertwined with hers. His voice was a lazy, innocent drawl. Rosa, darling, don't fight with Sean. It's just my bad luck. Maybe you should just send me back. He feigned leaving, but his hand clutched the hem of her dress, and when his eyes met mine they were full of triumphant possession. Rosa's expression softened instantly. Gavin, you promised you'd stay with me forever. Then she looked back at me. Don't worry. Sean is crazy about me. He always does what I say. We'll definitely get married. 7 years had done nothing to diminish Rosa's baffling self-confidence. Before I could speak again, she glared at me, her voice sharp with warning. You've enjoyed the title of Crestwood family's golden son-in-law for 7 years. It's time to let Gavin have his turn. He's suffered too much, and I won't let you bully him. A sarcastic smile touched my lips. I haven't done a thing. Don't try to pin this on me. Rosa's eyes narrowed. She looked me up and down, her face a blank mask. Do you think you're important? If it weren't for the fact that you waited 7 years for me, I would have thrown you out of the Crestwood estate long ago. I wouldn't be wasting my breath on you. Throw me out? I thought. And what on earth made her think I'd waited 7 years for her? The day she abandoned me was the day I stopped waiting. 7 years ago I sat in a tuxedo in the lead car of a wedding procession, driving through the mountains to pick up my bride. But she ran away. On the way there was a landslide. While I was out of the car checking the road, Rosa supposedly slipped and fell from a cliff. For 7 years everyone believed she was dead. I even chose her gravesite myself. Marrying into the Crestwood family had been an opportunity my father had fought tooth and nail to secure for me. Rosa could afford to be careless with my family's reputation, but I couldn't. Besides, she wasn't the only woman in the family. For the past 7 years I'd been a husband and a father. If she hadn't reappeared, I would have completely forgotten she ever existed. So seeing her again after all this time, I felt nothing. Rosa, let me repeat myself. You and I are no longer husband and wife, I stated calmly. Legally speaking, you are a deceased person. Who you marry has nothing to do with me. Rosa let out a dismissive scoff. At least you know your place. If you hadn't been so obsessed with marrying me back then, I wouldn't have had to flee the country and hide for 7 years. I always wondered how, with so many people there, she was the only one who died. It had been a vanishing act. She hadn't changed at all, still willing to do anything to get her way. When news of her death arrived, her mother fainted and was ill for months, nearly following her daughter to the grave. The family butler, who had only just arrived, overheard her words. Ms. Rosa, please don't say such things, he said, bowing his head slightly. Mr. Sean is now the vice president of Crestwood Industries. Gavin's eyes darkened. Beside Rosa, he asked casually, Rosa, didn't you say your grandfather would only pass the presidency to you? Rosa froze for a second, looking at me with confusion. My father only has one daughter. Who else is qualified to inherit the presidency besides me? I stared back, my expression unreadable. Did she leave her brain overseas? Did she have any idea how foolish she sounded? The butler was sweating, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. Ms. Rosa, what are you saying? Mr. Sean is married to Ms. Victoria. She is the president of the company now. Don't you remember your aunt? The day Rosa ran out on our wedding, I was left stranded on the road, surrounded by pitying and mocking stares. That was when Victoria stepped forward and said she would marry me. At that moment I was lost and powerless. Everyone knew it was my wedding day, but my bride had died on the way to the ceremony. Wife killer. Bad luck. Jinx. Those words nailed me to a pillar of shame. Then someone offered to marry me to prove to the world that I wasn't what they said I was. She would save my family's honor and pull me out of the abyss. Why wouldn't I say yes? Victoria hadn't planned on attending her niece's wedding, She had only come back to the country at her father's insistence. Yet she ended up becoming my wife. Rosa laughed mockingly. Everyone knows my Aunt Victoria is a powerhouse, that she only cares about her career. She wouldn't even glance at a doormat. Victoria was indeed a legendary figure in the city's business world. Half of the Crestwood family's assets were her personal property. Within the family she was treated like an empress. To this day I still didn't fully understand why she married me. There were so many men more handsome and wealthier than I. The butler continued trying to reason with Rosa. It's true, Ms. Rosa. You can check the news online or ask anyone in the family. Rosa just curled her lip in disdain. She randomly pointed to a gardener, then a maid. Both gave her the same answer. Her composure finally cracked. Her face went cold as she stared at me. Well done, Sean. What a master manipulator. I've only been gone a few years and you've already turned everyone in this house against me, making them all lie for you. I remained calm, unwilling to argue. I was married to Victoria. That was a fact. Whether Rosa believed it or not was irrelevant. She had been spoiled her entire life. Fearing she would continue to cause a scene, the butler quickly sent someone to call Victoria. Quick, call the president's secretary. Ask her to come home immediately. Victoria was in a meeting for a major aerospace project and had left for the office early. My father-in-law and Rosa's mother were also out, otherwise Rosa would never have had the chance to torment me like this. During the standoff my daughter Zoe suddenly ran into the room. Daddy, why didn't you come back to play with me? When Rosa saw Zoe, her face twisted in rage. The reason was simple, Zoe was a miniature version of me. Rosa's eyes darted between me and the child. Finally she raised a trembling hand and pointed at me. How dare you betray me? You even have a bastard child. Who is this little bastard with? Zoe had inherited Victoria's personality. While she didn't fully understand the word, she knew it wasn't a compliment. She put a hand to her chin like a little adult and said, Who are you calling a bastard? My mommy says people with dirty mouths need them washed out with soap. Zoe was 6 and knew almost everyone in the family, but she had never met Rosa. Rosa immediately snapped at her, You little bastard. How dare you talk back? That was it. I was furious. This was my precious daughter, the child I had waited for and cherished. Who are you to call her that? Rosa, watch your mouth or don't blame me for what happens next. Gavin glanced at me, then added with feigned innocence, This child looks like she's old enough for school, right? Don't tell me you cheated on Rosa before you even got married. His words were poison. Rosa's eyes shot to me, filled with a look that wanted to claw my face off. The one thing a woman can't stand is her husband cheating, especially when that man used to be her devoted follower, the man who had sworn to love her until death. She's 6, I said calmly. Sean, you disgust me. I'm gone for 7 years and you go and have a child with someone else. Have you no shame? Rosa spat. Only 7 years? I thought. We had only known each other for a few years and she was gone for 7 of them. And she was the one who abandoned me. The butler quickly tried to explain. Ms. Rosa, this is your aunt's child. Rosa exploded. You should shut up, you traitorous old fool. Where are my parents? Who let him get away with this? Cheating and acting so self-righteous. Everyone in the Crestwood family knows about this. Hearing that, Rosa's rage boiled over completely. Her eyes scanned the room like daggers. Who is the slut who dared to humiliate the Crestwood family like this? Does she have a death wish? No matter how she looked, she couldn't find a single suspect among the staff. I let out a sarcastic laugh. Gavin adopted a tone of false concern. Sean, you should just confess. If you push Rosa too far, even I won't be able to help you. I rolled my eyes at him. We're both men. I suggest you drop the act. Before I could react, Rosa's hand cracked across my face. Shut up. You cheated first. Having a child behind my back and you have the nerve to lecture Gavin? I hadn't expected her to strike. My cheek instantly swelled and throbbed. Seeing me get hit, Zoe charged at Rosa like a little bull. You hit my daddy, I'll hit you. Zoe, someone began, but Rosa grabbed Zoe by the collar of her dress and lifted her off the ground. My heart hammered against my ribs. Rosa, let the child go. The maids rushed forward to intervene. Miss, please put her down. If you don't, the president won't let this go. Everyone in the household knew that Zoe was the light of Victoria's life, a treasure she protected at all costs. But Rosa sneered. Get lost if you don't want to lose yours. I'm going to teach both of them a lesson today. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. Rosa's face was a mask of venom, her aura turning ice cold. According to the law, You committed adultery during our marriage and even had a child. I can demand you leave with nothing and compensate me for my losses. The problem is, we were never married, I said through clenched teeth. There was no adultery. Now put the child down. If she weren't a woman, I would have charged at her. I have never hit a woman. Zoe's little legs dangled in the air, kicking wildly, but she wasn't afraid. The surrounding staff, intimidated by Rosa's threats, didn't dare to step in, offering only weak pleas. Rosa ignored them. She shot me a meaningful look. After I'm done with this bastard, I'll deal with you personally. With that she started walking toward the door, still holding Zoe. The staff exchanged helpless glances, but no one dared to block her path. Finally, the butler stood in her way. Her face darkened instantly. What? You dare to stop me? The butler wiped sweat from his brow but maintained a respectful tone. Miss, please. Let's talk this over calmly. Don't be rash. Please put the little princess down. I saw my chance and lunged to grab Zoe, but Gavin blocked me. He smiled, a sinister glint in his eyes. Sean, what do you think you're doing? Don't do anything foolish. I swung a fist into his face. He theatrically stumbled back into a nearby vase, hitting his head and drawing blood. Rosa's eyes turned red with fury, and she unleashed her rage on Zoe. You dare touch Gavin? I'll beat this bastard to death. She lifted Zoe high, about to slam her onto the ground. For a moment my heart stopped. I instinctively dove forward. Zoe, seeing Rosa's madness, finally burst into tears. Get away. I'll deal with you later, Rosa screamed. I wrapped my arms around my daughter, holding on for dear life, refusing to let go no matter how hard Rosa pulled. Finally losing her patience, Rosa grabbed a nearby flower pot and brought it crashing down on my head. I felt searing pain and something warm and wet. The butler and maids rushed to pull her back, but she screamed at them to stop. Miss, stop. That's your uncle, the butler cried, grabbing her arm to stop her from striking again. Just then a calm, elegant voice drifted in from the doorway. What exactly is going on here? You had all better have a very good explanation. Footsteps halted on the threshold, unhurried and sure. I didn't have to turn to know the cadence. The air in the foyer shifted as if the house itself straightened. Explain, Victoria said. Not loud. Not cold. Just final. Everything paused, the maids with their hands half raised, the butler, breath caught on a pleading syllable, Gavin, cupping his bleeding cheek with a hand he'd forgotten to lower, Rosa, a statue with my daughter lifted one arm like a trophy she didn't deserve. Zoe twisted toward the voice, relief flashing across her tear-shiny face. Mom. Rosa's fingers twitched at the word. Gavin's mouth pulled into a small, cunning smile that never touched his eyes. Put the child down, Victoria said. She crossed the marble with the deliberate grace of someone who knew every vein in the stone by memory. Her suit was charcoal, cut like a precise thought, light slid off the silk at her collarbone and gathered in the smooth coil of her hair. The room's colors dulled against her. Rosa didn't move. The muscles in her forearm trembled with strain, but she kept her hold out of spite more than strength, chin jutting like a dare. This bastard hit Gavin. Zoe said, high and fierce, he hit him because you hit my daddy. Victoria's gaze flicked to the smear of blood drying at my temple, the splinters of terracotta near my shoe. Her expression didn't change. She extended a hand toward Zoe, palm up. Come here, little owl. Rosa laughed, short and ugly. If I were you, I'd be ashamed. A child out of wedlock. Victoria didn't answer. She simply closed the distance until the space between them was nothing. I saw the moment Rosa understood that Victoria wasn't going to stop, gloating parted from calculation, leaving behind a flash of unease. Even then, Rosa couldn't surrender without a spectacle. She let Zoe go with a theatrical drop and pivoted her wrist so the child would stumble. Zoe didn't stumble. She flung herself forward and burrowed into Victoria's side. My wife wrapped her arm around our daughter and breathed once, slow, through her nose. Only then did she lift her eyes to Rosa. You're aware you're legally dead, Victoria said. This house is not yours. The company is not yours. The staff is not yours. The child you just laid hands on is mine. If you want to speak, choose your words like matches in a dry forest. Rosa opened her mouth. Whatever she meant to say burned up under Victoria's stare, turned to ash in her throat. Gavin, sensing the direction of power, adopted an expression of humble awe that would have been convincing if I hadn't watched him put it on like a hat. President Crestwood, he said, pitching the gravel in his voice halfway between flattery and grievance. There's been a misunderstanding. Rosa and I. You'll have your turn, Victoria said without looking at him. She nodded once at the butler. He'd worked under 5 Crestwood heads, he didn't need more than a nod. 3 security officers appeared like they'd stepped out of the wall itself. They positioned themselves with practiced unobtrusiveness. The message was plain. Victoria turned to me. "Come," she said. A command, and also a question. Also a hand pressed, briefly, to my wrist where the pulse beat fast. I followed her to the long room we used for winter light, Zoe's small fingers hooked in the hem of my jacket as if to tether us all. The others trailed at a distance, Rosa and Gavin together, the butler, 2 guards, a maid with a glass of water that trembled but did not spill. We sat. We did not offer them seats, but Rosa took one as if the chair feared her. Gavin remained standing, one hand in his pocket, his posture a vanishing point of charm. Blood had clotted in his eyebrows where my fist landed. He looked like a saint in a painting who'd learned to bleed handsomely. "Mr. Sean is the vice president of the aerospace division," the butler said, because the house hated silence after violence and always tried to fill it with context. "Temporary," I said. The taste of terracotta still grit on my tongue. "I prefer designing engines to steering ships." "Don't sell yourself short," Victoria murmured. Rosa's gaze tracked the exchange like a predator measuring jump distance. "Lovely domestic tableau," she said, brittle bright. "You two in your little play acting. How long does the charade go on? Until my grandfather dies? Until you've emptied the treasury? Until this child of yours is old enough to be useful?" "My daughter is not a prop," I said. "Your granddaughter," Victoria corrected, evenly, to a woman who had once called her aunt and still did in public for applause. It wasn't a correction for Rosa's sake. It was for me. Maybe it shouldn't have mattered, that small word. But the sound of it was a coin dropping clean in a well and sewing itself into the fabric of my chest, exactly where the flower pot had split the skin. Zoe's fingers tightened. She didn't know the legal shape of love, she knew the weather of it, and the weather in the room steadied. "You claim widow's rights when it suits you and single woman's freedom when it doesn't," Victoria said. "You disappeared. Your parents buried a box of air. We mourned. We built. Now you barge in and try to throttle a 6-year-old. She was mouthing off, Rosa said. "Besides, if you two were so innocent, why did he hit Gavin? Why did he?" "Because he tried to keep my daughter safe," I said, and the shock was that it didn't come out as an apology. "Because you slapped me and you were about to hurt a child who doesn't belong to you." "Doesn't belong," Rosa repeated slowly, like a foreign phrase she wasn't sure she could get her mouth around. Then her smile sharpened. "Your child. So you admit it." "I never hit it," I said. Rosa tipped her chin at the guards, at the butler, at the sitting room where her mother had taught her to drink coffee out of tiny porcelain cups and call it patience. "You think you can turn a house against me," she said. "You think you can gaslight me in my grandfather's home." "Enough," Victoria said. "You don't get to wield the word gaslight because you read it in a comment section. If anyone here has been manipulated, it wasn't you." Gavin's mouth tightened. A hairline crack in porcelain. "On what grounds," he said, quiet, "do you slander me?" "On the grounds," Victoria said, in the same tone she used when she dismissed a bad bit in a negotiation, "that you enjoyed theater long before you learned Rosa's name." The butler laid a slim folder on the glass table, its edges squared. He didn't need to be told which one. I had only seen fragments, in midnight glimpses when Victoria worked late, the rest I learned as she spoke. "Your given name," Victoria said to Gavin, "is Nathaniel Gray. You were expelled from the University of Sefton 6 years ago for tampering with a lab trial. You reinvented yourself twice between then and now. One alias has a record of raising donations for an eye injury foundation that never existed outside a shell company. The other alias purchased a vial of chlorpyrifos under an industrial exemption and used it, in subtherapeutic doses over months, to induce photophobia and corneal damage in small animals while testing resilience protocols for dependent bonding. You have, to put it plainly, practiced manufacturing damsels in distress." The room held its breath like a violin holds a note. Rosa laughed, too loudly, and looked at him the way a person insists a portrait resembles them even after the painter has left. "He nearly lost his sight saving me," she said, as if repetition could lacquer truth. "Or," Victoria said, "he nearly took yours so you would think you owed him everything." Gavin's show of confusion was excellent. I watched his eyes. When someone lies, savvy eyes move to yours to gauge effect. His moved to Rosa's to adjust dosage. "Ask him about the landslide," I said before I could stop myself. The word shifted weight. Victoria looked at me. I didn't usually speak about that day. Not when nightmares condensed into sweat that woke me. Not when Zoe stuck glow-in-the-dark stars to the ceiling of my office because I told her once that I was scared of the dark in tunnels. When I pulled over to check the road, my head swam, I said. I told myself it was nerves. The edge of the cliff felt closer than it was. The rocks came down. I went back for Rosa and she was gone. We assumed the worst. Maybe it was just a misstep. Maybe I imagined the slow sting at the back of my throat that made the world smear. Or maybe someone had already measured my weight and the slope's angle and my tendency to step forward when I'm responsible for other people and decided that if I stumbled at precisely the right time. Rosa's eyes, half empty when I mentioned her falling, flared wide when I mentioned my stumbling. All these years, her story had been that she slipped. But the original plan hadn't required her to slip. It only required me to. You think I tried to kill you? She said. You ridiculous. I think he didn't care which of us fell long as it turned a wedding into a funeral, I said. A funeral makes a better ghost story for the future he wanted. The poor lover who sacrificed his eyes. The returning widow. The man who couldn't bear the guilt and would sign anything to make amends. Gavin kept his face in a sympathetic arrangement with surgical precision. Grief rewrites memories, he said gently. You're traumatized. It happens. If you like, I have a therapist. Stop selling, Victoria said. Rosa stood so fast her chair scraped a long, ugly sound. You think this proves anything? She stabbed a finger at the folder no one had opened. Anyone can print lies on expensive paper. This is all because you couldn't stand that Grandpa loved me. Loved the daughter he believed he lost, Victoria said. The syllables were soft as a bruise. He wears a hat in the garden now because sun makes him dizzy. He forgets he's wearing it and looks for it, puts a second one on. He is old. He is kinder than we deserve. He calls Zoe by your name sometimes. She lets him. She brings him the right hat. Zoe nodded into Victoria's side like this was a secret they'd agreed to keep and kiss with. Rosa's expression flickered. For an instant, she was a girl I'd met at a charity gala who laughed at the wrong parts of jokes because she was thinking too fast and too far ahead. Then Gavin's hand found her elbow and steadied her into the version of herself that served him. Enough, Rosa said. I'm marrying him. Draw up whatever papers you like. Give me my assets. Give me my house. Give me my birthright. Or I'll go to the press and tell them you forced me out so your boy toy could play family. Every person in the room drew breath at once. The word wasn't new, the malice in it was. It didn't strike me. It slid off because I had armor now, and my armor had a small hand in it. Victoria's face didn't change. She would take a knife between the ribs before letting an epithet change the temperature of her voice. Then go to the press, she said. You'll find my legal team there with a timeline and medical records. You'll find footage from the night you staged your first fundraising event. I never. You were in a basement bar with no windows, Victoria said. The only light was a cheap blue LED sign. It didn't hurt your eyes. On the nights you were most fragile, Nathaniel, you took the longest routes home past construction sites with halogen rigs. How would you even know, Rosa began, but the sentence died when she realized there was only one way. I had known, of course, that Victoria protected what she loved with more ferocity than most people reserved for vengeance. I had known that her calm contained 1,000 contingencies. I hadn't known the shape of all of them. I hadn't known that she'd built an investigation under my feet while I was learning to sleep without seeing dust pouring toward the windshield. We didn't settle it that day. People like Rosa don't implode because you tell them they're wrong, they reroute like rivers around rock. The standoff choked itself into silence and broke with practicalities. A guard escorted Gavin to the medical wing to have his head cleaned and document his injuries. Another escorted Rosa to a guest suite, not the one that had ever been hers, in which every drawer had a camera and every camera had a guard behind it. That night Zoe slept sprawled across my chest while Victoria worked in the dark, the blue light of her screen drawing a constellation across the ceiling. I must have dreamed of salt and gravel because I woke with grit on my tongue and the knowledge that Nathaniel, wasn't finished. When men like him are cornered, they don't flee. They set a fire and run while everyone else is busy with the bucket brigade. The fire came in the form of a gala. The Crestwood Foundation held a winter fundraiser in the atrium of the aerospace wing, sleek planes suspended above donors who loved the idea of weightlessness because gravity had never really applied to them. I'd argued against hosting so soon after Rosa's reappearance. Victoria said no, we wouldn't cede our calendar to chaos. She tightened security until the building hummed. I wore the tux I'd worn 7 years ago. It wasn't defiance. It was plain arithmetic. You can either keep being revised by a memory or you can write over it with your own pen. The jacket hung different on my shoulders. There are muscles that only grow after you carry a daughter who refuses to be put down when you have meetings at her bedtime. There are muscles that grow after you decide forgiveness is not amnesia but the decision to stop bleeding for someone who keeps stabbing. Gavin arrived with a patch at his hairline and a humility that was almost convincing if you didn't know he'd practiced. He made a show of keeping his distance, of being crowded by pitying socialites who wanted to touch the edge of a story without cutting themselves. Rosa wore white. I suppose she thought it looked pure. It looked like a dare. Midway through the night, a waiter offered me a whiskey neat that smelled wrong. Too sweet on top. Underneath, a bitterness that wasn't oak. I didn't take it. He moved on to a cluster of young men from the machining plant. I saw one of them, Ben, maybe 22, brilliant with wing stress calculations and terrible at hiding how proud he was to wear a badge with our name, Reach. Hold, I said, and I didn't realize I'd said it like Victoria until he froze mid-lift. I took the glass and set it on a pedestal meant for a sculpture of a winglet cross-section. The liquid left a crescent where it kissed the crystal. I unscrewed a miniature test strip I kept in my pocket ever since I started designing fuel lines. Maintenance men carry tools that executives don't. You can tell what a person really is by what their pockets bulge with. I dipped the strip and watched it bloom a color that didn't belong at a charity event. Who gave you this tray? I asked. The waiter, young and scared, stared at me. Then his eyes skittered to the side, seeking a cue. Don't look, I said. Say the words. He did. The name he said rhymed with the one in the folder. I didn't cause a scene. I touched Victoria's wrist with 2 fingers. That was our language, not panicking in public. Her eyes flicked to the glass, the strip, the waiter's hands. She breathed and the room reconfigured to her breath. Security moved without making anyone's champagne ripple. The donor nearest me told a story about airplane meals like he hadn't almost watched a junior engineer collapse from a spiked drink. I found Rosa at the edge of the mezzanine, watching the crowd with the intentness of a person seeing themselves reflected in every glass. Gavin slid up beside her with a curve of body that telegraphed intimacy for the cameras. I wondered if he loved any part of her. People like him can love in ways that counterfeit the real thing perfectly except for one feature: they will always let you burn if it keeps them warm. Don't drink, I said to Rosa. She didn't look at me. Says the man who lies for a living. Don't drink, I said again, and I took the flute out of her hand before she could angle it toward her mouth out of spite. My fingers closed over the stem and the base, and for a second our hands touched. She flinched like she'd been scalded, and I realized she did feel something. It just ran through a different circuit. The glint at the bottom of the glass wasn't the bubble of good champagne. It was residue. I knew the color now. Gavin's smile went buttery. You must be exhausted, Sean, he murmured. Carrying all that bitterness around. Careful, fatigue makes the mind see ghosts. Ghosts are honest, I said. It's the living who lie. He reached for the flute. I let him take it, because I wanted his prints on the stem. He raised it just enough for a photo to be purposeful and didn't drink. Of course he didn't. He'd never dose himself with his own story. We didn't arrest him on the spot. He hadn't tried to poison a donor, he'd tried to ruin me, or someone like me, in the most credibly deniable way. Security escorted the waiter to a quiet room without cameras and gave him water, and then a lawyer with a gentle face explained whistleblower protections in an alley of words lined with kindness. After the last donor left and the last string from the quartet sighed into silence, after Zoe fell asleep in my office under the comforting roar of fans, cooling machines, and Victoria slid off her heels like a warrior removing greaves, Rosa came to find me. Not alone. Gavin was with her, of course, like a shadow that refused to obey light. You set me up, Rosa said. Her lipstick had bled into the small cracks at the corners of her mouth. From the second I stepped back into this house, you started plotting. Plotting would imply patience, I said. I didn't know you were alive 2 days ago. I barely know what clothes I'm wearing tomorrow. Don't be cute, she spat. You thought you could make me look crazy. Drugging glasses. I told you not to drink, I said. You can hate me later. Now, she said. I hate you now. Gavin's hand on her elbow again, the subtle pressure of a sheepdog edging you toward a chute. He had to know the ground was shifting under him. He doubled down with the tenderness he'd burned into his bones for moments like this. Rosa, he murmured, your heart rate is up. Breathe like Alina taught you. In for 4, out for 6. There you go. We don't have to stay where we're not wanted. She nodded, small, as if the nod were happening to her. She let herself be turned toward the exit. It would have been easy to let her walk into the rest of the story he'd written. It would have been cleaner. Fewer depositions. Fewer late nights. Less explaining to Zoe, later, why her great-grandfather sometimes came into rooms with two hats and called her another child's name. Clean isn't the same as right. Victoria taught me that. She also taught me that if you must pick someone up, you do it with both hands. Not because you are responsible for their weight, but because you don't want to drop them on yourself by accident. Rosa, I said. Wait. She looked back like a person looking over a cliff calculates distance, wind, trajectory. Not because she wants to jump. Because she wants to know if she can survive. You think I'm a monster, she said. I think you were lost, I said. And then I think you got found by the wrong person. Gavin smiled. Jealousy is a bad look on you. It's not jealousy, I said. It's pattern recognition. I told her, quickly, because momentum matters, the strip, the smell, the waiter's eyes. The alias. The lab. The fundraiser with the blue sign that didn't burn. Lies, Gavin whispered into her hair, and I saw the way his breath against her ear had become a leash. Then prove it, she said to me, with a defiance I remembered from a time when she wanted to teach me to dance and I kept stepping on her toes and she made me try again until midnight. If it's true, prove it. If it's not, get out of my way and let me be happy. Sometimes proof is an instrument you put in a stranger's hands and hope they play it as intended. Sometimes proof is a pill pressing at the seam of a pocket. Gavin stood too close. His hand remained on her elbow, thumb moving in small circles that looked like comfort and were really S-shaped commands. In that moment he didn't plan for the thing he himself would have done. He forgot to watch the smaller players. The waiter from earlier, who'd been debriefed and sent home through the service corridor because he was shaking, came the wrong way around and bumped Gavin with an apology so sincere it was not acting. Gavin's hand slipped. A small plastic ampule skittered across the floor toward the base of a scale model, the kind of thing no one sees because the human eye edits out the inconvenient. I saw it because I had learned to see what tried to be smaller than the world's attention. I stepped and crushed it under my heel. The smell was sharper this time, uncut. Not lethal. Not tonight. But enough to make a person dizzy, gullible, sick. Enough to make apologies sound like promises. Enough to make a man look like a savior. Rosa stared at the broken ampule like it was a fairy tale glass slipper that fit another woman's foot. Her mouth opened and closed. She didn't look at me. She looked at Gavin. It's not, he began, and for the first time since I'd met him, he had no script. The look I'd seen in his eyes when he cupped his bleeding head, calculation, flashed bare. Rosa's palm met his cheek with a sound like something expensive breaking. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't thought out. She'd struck me with contempt. She struck him with betrayal. The difference rang. You needed me to be weak, she said. You needed me to be yours. You needed to be thanked. That's why you. He reached for her with that same practiced tenderness, willing to wear blame as long as it kept the leash. I stepped between them not because I am a hero but because I am a father and a husband and a man who decided 7 years ago to stop bleeding for people who sharpen their knives on my bones. Step back, I said. He didn't. Men like him don't know how to move away. Security arrived with the delicacy of a string quartet finding a new key. The lawyer with the gentle face reappeared, which is the same as God in these circumstances. Gavin tried one last pitch, a plea spun with the right percentages of shame and hope. It would have worked on the man I used to be. It didn't even find purchase on the man I am. We filed charges. We didn't hide. We released a statement before gossip could lay eggs. It spoke in the voice of a company that knew the difference between a scandal and a rot. The first you starve of oxygen, the second you cut out deep. Rosa stayed 3 nights in a guest suite under watch. On the morning of the 4th, she came to breakfast early. The house was quiet in the way big houses are only at dawn, when the hum is all machine. She stood in my kitchen looking at the mug she used to like, the one with the gold lip that turned coffee into an excuse to touch metal with your mouth. Why did you save me? She said. You don't have to perform the person who's above apologizing, I said. It's exhausting. She held the mug like a talisman. Her eyes were raw at the edges. She'd slept, maybe, or maybe she'd watched the ceiling repaint itself all night with the worst versions of what might have been. I'm not apologizing, she said. Okay, I said. But I am. Not sure who I am when I'm not the version of me people want, she said. You wanted a bride. My mother wanted a perfect daughter. Gavin wanted a story. When all that's gone, what's left? A person, I said. She bristled. Then, surprisingly, smiled. I hate that you didn't make it more poetic. Poetry is for after rehab, I said. She laughed. It landed bruised and better than crying. I deserve a cell, she said. You deserve hard work, I said. A therapist who isn't paid by your boyfriend. People who don't need your last name to make them feel taller. A job where you start over and everyone there thinks you're boring for a while. She made a face at the last part like I'd prescribed cod liver oil. Boring, she said. That's violence. Sometimes boring is the antidote, I said. She looked past me toward the window. In the yard, the gardener lifted his hat to the sun and then put it back on. 2 hats. The second perched on top of the first. Zoe liked to call it Grandpa's crown. He didn't correct her. Tell him I'm sorry, Rosa said. She meant her grandfather. Also the butler. Possibly me. Not now. Later. When it won't make him cry. I will, I said. We didn't kiss and make up. We didn't pose for a photo to prove civility. She left that afternoon with a suitcase and a security escort to a clinic with a reputation for saving addicts without making them confess on camera. The house felt emptier and cleaner without her noise. A week later, the board called a vote. A faction wanted me as president. They liked the story. The boy no longer a boy. The son-in-law who waited. Except I hadn't waited. I'd simply lived. That mattered to me. It did not matter to them. They wanted a poster. I declined. Not because I'm noble. Because I know what I am good at, the way an engine is a symphony of tolerances, the way a line of code can turn lift into math, the way a little girl falls asleep in your lap while you're reading about flight because your voice is where gravity fades. I asked them to keep the woman who had already saved this family twice in 10 years and did it without making the act look like a favor. After, we drove to the coast. Not because it was symbolic. Because Zoe wanted to see where sky thinks it's ocean. She fell asleep with one hand open on her car seat like she'd been holding a star and forgot to close her fingers. At a light, Victoria touched my jaw where the bruise still lived hidden under stubble, and something inside me, the chain that tied me to a boy with rock dust in his teeth and a tux I hadn't earned, loosened. You didn't have to save her, she said quietly. I didn't do it for her, I said. I know, she said. We parked and carried Zoe over the dunes. The wind made a moving sculpture out of her hair. Victoria stood with the horizon wrapped around her and looked like a person who could tell the tide what to do and have it consider her request seriously. 7 years ago, I had sat in a car and believed my life ended on a mountain road. Turns out my life started in a municipal hall with fluorescent lights where a woman I didn't deserve signed a paper and said vows as if she meant to keep them even if the world was wrong about me. On the drive back, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. No theatrics. Just a line, I'm sorry for what I made of you in my head. I don't know who I am. I'm trying to find out. It didn't have a name. It didn't need one. I typed and erased 3 different responses. In the end I sent a link to a clinic, a therapist, a community center with a boring name and a waiting room with chairs that didn't let you pretend you weren't sitting. Then I put the phone face down and reached for Victoria's hand on the seat between us. I keep thinking about gravity, I said. Romantic, she said, amused. I used to think it was always falling, I said. Now I think it's what keeps you where you promised to be. Her smile was a slow turning. Don't get too poetic, she said. You'll make me suspicious. At home, Zoe woke and asked to help me build the model rocket we'd promised. We glued and sanded in the garage with the door open so the smell could escape. She asked if real rockets had hearts. I told her somewhere in all that metal something beat. Yes. That's what engines are. Heat tamed and made to move. The trick is not letting the fire eat what it's meant to lift. We launched the next weekend in the field behind the plant. A small white arc rode itself against the morning. It did not fall. Not yet. We watched until it did, then ran laughing to where it landed, and that was the whole of it. Up, then down, then hands out, catching what comes back to you if you're wise enough to wait in the right place.